The most regrettable aspect was their complete unawareness that the individual they were confronting was not a suspect, but a sheriff's deputy possessing more authority than both of them combined. Before we proceed further, please share your location in the comments section below and ensure you subscribe, as tomorrow's story is one you absolutely will not want to miss. Sheriff's Deputy Marcus Rivers, age 38, had dedicated nearly 15 years of service to Fulton County. Within his department, he was recognized for his ability to maintain composure in situations where other deputies might lose their patience. Marcus had cultivated a reputation as the officer people called upon when a situation demanded a steady and experienced hand. On this particular day, he was not responding to any emergency call. He was simply making his way back to the county courthouse after completing some administrative tasks at a local substation, piloting a black Chevrolet Tahoe, a vehicle issued by the county. Marcus held the steering wheel with one hand, the late afternoon sun glinting off the badge secured to his duty belt. His radio emitted a low hum in the background as he smoothly transitioned between lanes, his thoughts occupied with nothing more pressing than whether he would have sufficient time to grab a meal before his next scheduled meeting. The road remained tranquil until a white Ford Crown Victoria emerged from the median strip and positioned itself uncomfortably close to his rear bumper. Marcus checked his rearview mirror. The patrol vehicle maintained an unnerving proximity. He could discern 2 officers inside, neither of whom he recognized. The driver, Officer Daniel Whitford, leaned forward, his gaze sharp and focused, while his partner, Officer Kyle Brenner, appeared to be pointing at something within their dashboard. Marcus had encountered that particular expression before. The look officers gave when their minds had already reached a conclusion, bypassing the need for proper training or protocol. Moments later, the dazzling red and blue lights erupted behind him. Marcus sighed, his movements deliberate and controlled, as he gently guided the SUV onto the shoulder and engaged the parking brake. Even before his vehicle door had fully settled into its frame, Whitford and Brenner were already exiting their car, their hands moving too close to their holsters, their demeanor radiating attention far exceeding that of a standard traffic stop without a clear explanation. Whitford barked, "Driver, keep your hands where we can see them." Marcus slowly raised both hands, palms open, resting them on the steering wheel. "Officer, is there a particular reason for this stop?" His voice remained calm, steady, and even-toned. However, Whitford offered no response. Instead, he approached the SUV as if confronting a dangerous individual, not a fellow officer. Brenner maneuvered toward the passenger side, his eyes scanning the interior as if searching for something to validate his preconceived notions. Whitford reached the driver's window. He did not request a license and registration. He did not introduce himself. He provided no explanation for the stop. Instead, he simply stared. "Is this your vehicle?" Whitford inquired, his voice curt and laced with suspicion. "It's assigned to me," Marcus replied. "I'm on duty and heading back to the courthouse." Whitford's eyebrows drew together tightly. "Oh, really? You work for the county? What exactly do you do?" Marcus did not shift his position. "Sheriff's deputy," Brenner interjected from the passenger side of the SUV, emitting a low, skeptical chuckle. "Sure you are," he muttered. "A badge in the wrong hands doesn't hold much weight." Marcus maintained an even breathing rhythm. He had encountered officers like this previously, officers whose assumptions preceded their professional conduct. What surprised him, however, was the swiftness of their escalation without even checking the vehicle's license plates, which clearly bore government markings. "Officer Whitford," Marcus stated calmly. "My identification is on my belt." "I'm going to reach for it slowly so you can confirm who I am," Whitford declared, sharply raising a hand. "Hold still. Not yet." Brenner moved closer, now peering through the rear window. "He's got equipment back here," Brenner observed. "A large bag, a tactical case, a radio charger. Something feels off." Marcus kept his tone measured. "That's my issued gear." Whitford's jaw tightened. "We'll see." A subtle shift occurred in the atmosphere. Then one of those almost imperceptible changes that signaled to Marcus that the situation was not merely unprofessional. It was rapidly deteriorating into something dangerous. Whitford's hand hovered near his holster. Brenner's eyes darted around the interior, as if searching for something that wasn't present. Neither officer appeared to be actively listening to Marcus's words. They were reacting to what they assumed him to be. Whitford stepped back slightly, as if preparing to assert control in the most detrimental manner. "All right," he announced. "Here's how this is going to go down. You're going to exit the vehicle slowly and calmly. We'll handle the rest afterward." Marcus remained motionless. "Not yet," he stated. "Before I move anything," he said, meeting Whitford's gaze through the window, "I need to inform you of something important." Marcus held Whitford's stare through the glass, his voice steady and controlled, yet carrying enough weight to prompt any professional to pause. "Before I move anything," he repeated, "you need to know that everything occurring at this moment is being recorded by 3 cameras. Your body cameras, my dash camera, and the courthouse system I am currently reporting to." These words did not placate Whitford. They unsettled him. He stepped back from the window as if surprised by Marcus's confidence. It was as though authority emanating from Marcus felt like a challenge rather than a simple statement of fact. Brenner also shifted, glancing toward the dash camera mounted on Marcus's windshield, as if he had overlooked the fact that police vehicles automatically recorded. However, Whitford forced his voice back into a commanding tone. "Exit the vehicle," he reiterated, this time more forcefully. Now Marcus slowly opened the door. Not rapidly or dramatically, but just enough to demonstrate he was not offering any resistance. The sunlight first illuminated his uniform, the badge on his belt gleaming clearly as he stepped onto the shoulder. But instead of an acknowledgement or even a flicker of embarrassment, Brenner muttered under his breath, "Could have bought that online." Whitford circled behind Marcus immediately, his tone clipped. "Hands behind your back." "For what reason?" Marcus inquired. His tone was not aggressive, merely factual. He was providing them an opportunity to rectify their actions, to adhere to policy, to reconsider. But they did not. Whitford grasped Marcus's wrist with the unrefined haste typical of rookie officers, quick, rough, and impulsive. Marcus did not resist, did not twist away, did not react. He had successfully restrained dozens of suspects throughout his career and understood something those two evidently did not. Panic is infectious. Calm is power. "I am not resisting," Marcus stated, allowing his arms to lower behind him naturally. "But you still have not informed me of the reason for the stop." Brenner disregarded protocol and moved directly toward the rear door of the SUV. "Hey," Marcus said, turning slightly. "You do not have consent to search." Brenner ignored him and yanked the door open. Marcus felt a tightening in his chest, not from fear, but from sheer frustration. He had worked too diligently, served for too long, and established too much credibility to be treated as someone who did not belong in his own uniform. Whitford gave him a slight shove, not enough to cause him to fall, but sufficient to underscore that this was not about procedure. It was about control. Inside the SUV, Brenner immediately began rummaging through the radio bag, the handcuffs pouch, and the trauma kit. The items clattered loudly, each sound more reckless than the last. Marcus maintained an even tone. "That's an illegal search, you know that." Whitford clicked his tongue. "We'll decide what's legal." A vehicle slowed on the highway. The driver stared with wide eyes as it passed. A moment later another car slowed. Then another. People couldn't discern the exact situation, but they recognized the visual. Brenner moved to the passenger seat, tossing aside Marcus's paperwork, pushing aside the notebook he used for daily call logs. "Taurus, you've got a lot of equipment," Brenner remarked. "A bit much for a courthouse dropout." Marcus exhaled, struggling to remain composed. "I am not repeating myself. I am a sheriff's deputy. My identification is right there on my belt." Whitford avoided looking at it. He did not wish to. He preferred the narrative he had already constructed in his mind. Then he made the mistake that finally drew attention. He pressed Marcus more forcefully against the SUV. Just as another vehicle pulled over onto the shoulder, a woman emerged, her phone already recording. "Are you all right?" she called out cautiously. Whitford snapped his head in her direction. "Ma'am, please step back." She did not. More vehicles began to slow behind her, their drivers watching, recording, and bewildered as to why a man in uniform was being treated as a suspect. Brenner popped open the rear compartment where Marcus stored his tactical vest. He froze. Inside was a full county-issued vest with the word Sheriff printed in bold letters across the front. Whitford noticed his partner's sudden stillness. "What is it?" Brenner did not answer immediately, but a subtle change flickered across his face. Marcus felt the tension shift, not dissipate, but change. Whitford moved toward the back door, peering inside. His gaze fell upon the vest, then the patch, then the serial number. For a brief moment his confidence faltered. "This doesn't make sense," Whitford muttered. "It makes perfect sense," Marcus replied. "If you had run the plates, you would have known precisely who the vehicle belongs to." Brenner swallowed hard. "Danny, his name is on the vest." Whitford shot Brenner a glare as if he had spoken out of turn. Marcus lifted his chin, not with smugness or anger, but with weariness. "Now you see why I kept my hands visible." Whitford offered no retort. His posture altered, but his pride remained. He turned back toward Marcus, attempting to regain composure. "Where's your badge ID?" "On my belt," Marcus reminded him. "Where it's supposed to be." Whitford finally looked. Truly looked. His jaw tightened. His eyes darted between the badge, the ID, and the gear inside the SUV. Everything matched. Everything was legitimate. Everything they had assumed was incorrect. Brenner quietly closed the rear door, the aggressive search ceasing. The boldness vanished. The woman recording from the roadside called out again. "Is he a police officer? Why are you treating him like that?" Whitford did not acknowledge her. He couldn't because Brenner had just discovered something else, a folder containing Marcus's case assignments, each bearing the official seal of the sheriff's office. "Danny," Brenner whispered, his voice cracking. "We've made a mistake." Whitford's face drained of color. Then finally, he said, uttering the words Marcus had been awaiting since the stop commenced. "Chief, you better come and observe this." Chief Inspector Ronald Keaton was not a man prone to haste. With 28 years of service in uniform, he moved with the measured gait of someone who had witnessed every conceivable error officers could commit. Yet even he was unprepared for what he encountered on the side of Highway 92 that afternoon. When Keaton exited his cruiser, he anticipated a routine traffic stop. He expected to find a suspect. He did not expect to see a fully uniformed sheriff's deputy pressed against an SUV while two visibly nervous officers averted their gaze as if caught in the act by guilty rookies. He closed his car door deliberately, his eyes scanning the scene. The open gear bag, the vest partially pulled from its case, the bystanders recording from the shoulder, and Marcus standing tall, despite Whitford's grip still lingering on his arm. Keaton approached with the calm demeanor of a man who understood that authority did not necessitate shouting. "All right," he stated, his voice firm yet even. "Someone explain to me precisely what is transpiring here." Whitford straightened his posture, attempting to reassert control. "Sir, we pulled him over due to suspicious driving. The vehicle did not appear to belong—" Keaton raised a single hand. Just one. And Whitford fell silent, as if his voice had been abruptly disconnected. Keaton then turned his attention to Marcus, not with suspicion, but with the slow, appraising look he used to identify competence in a room. "Deputy Rivers," Keaton said, "are you all right?" Marcus nodded once. "Yes, sir." Whitford blinked. The word struck him with considerable force. "Deputy Rivers, He had not believed Marcus when he stated it earlier, and hearing Keaton vocalize it shattered the last vestige of his denial. Keaton moved closer. "Why is your equipment scattered on the ground, Deputy?" Marcus offered no response. He did not need to. He simply looked toward Brenner, who swallowed and stared at his boots. Keaton then turned his attention to the two officers. "Did either of you run the license plates on this vehicle?" Silence. The kind of silence that spoke volumes of the truth before either man could utter a word. Keaton's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Did either of you verify his identification before physically detaining him?" More silence. A passing car honked. The driver's phone was pointed toward the scene. It served as another stark reminder that this was not merely a misguided traffic stop. It was rapidly transforming into a public relations disaster. Keaton exhaled heavily and looked back at Marcus. "Deputy, I will handle this from here. Thank you for maintaining your composure." Marcus gave a slight nod. "Yes, sir. But they had already searched my vehicle without my consent. Keaton turned his head sharply towards Whitford. You two conducted a search? Whitford attempted to speak. Sir, we believed... You believed what? Keaton interrupted. His tone did not escalate. It did not need to. His disappointment carried far more weight than any outburst could. That a black man driving a county-issued SUV must be a criminal. That his uniform was stolen. That his badge was fake? Is that what you're about to tell me? Whitford's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Brenner spoke instead, his voice low and cracking. We made assumptions, sir. Keaton's eyes narrowed. You certainly did. He reached into the SUV and retrieved Marcus's vest himself, reading the prominent sheriff patch and running his thumb across the serial number. His expression hardened. This alone should have terminated the entire encounter, he stated. But instead, you escalated. A woman on the shoulder called out, still recording. He told them he was an officer. They ignored him. Keaton did not reply to her directly, but he heard her. He heard everything. He turned back to Marcus. Deputy Rivers, would you like to provide your account before I proceed? Yes, sir, Marcus replied. He maintained his professionalism, but each word delivered with precision. They initiated the stop without stating a reason. I kept my hands visible. They refused to check my identification. And when I informed them of its location, they prevented me from reaching for it. They removed me from the vehicle without cause, and commenced searching it the moment I exited. Keaton nodded slowly, absorbing each statement. Then he looked at Whitford. His voice remained calm, excessively calm. Is any part of what Deputy Rivers just stated untrue? Whitford shook his head once. No, sir. And you, Officer Brenner? Brenner's voice was barely audible. No, sir. Keaton took a step closer to them, lowering his voice so only the two officers could hear. However, Marcus could still discern every word. Do you comprehend the gravity of what you have just done? He inquired. You unlawfully detained a fellow deputy. You conducted an illegal search. You escalated a situation you yourselves created. And you did all of this while your body cameras were recording and civilians were documenting the event. Whitford's eyes dropped. Brenner's hands trembled at his sides. Keaton straightened again, addressing everyone present. Deputy Rivers, he announced, you are no longer under detention. You are free to stand down. Marcus stepped away from the SUV, rolling his shoulders as the tension he had been holding since the stop began finally eased. But Keaton was not finished. He turned fully toward Whitford and Brenner. Officer Whitford, Officer Brenner, turn around. Both men froze. Keaton's voice remained uncharacteristically steady. Slowly, they turned, the realization of their actions settling upon them like a chilling downpour. Marcus watched, not with satisfaction or a desire for retribution, but with the quiet, unwavering calm of someone who had endured far too much and was finally witnessing the truth catch up. Keaton reached for his radio. Dispatch, this is Chief Keaton. I require internal affairs at my location immediately. We have a serious misconduct situation. Whitford's shoulders slumped. Brenner closed his eyes. Keaton did not cease there. To avoid any interference with the investigation, he declared, both of you are being detained pending the IA review. He then looked at Marcus, truly looked at him. If you choose to file a formal complaint, Keaton stated, everything you require is already documented. Marcus nodded slowly. I intend to. Keaton issued one final command, the one that concluded this segment with the precise shift in power that viewers had been anticipating. Turn around, both of you, hands behind your back. Chief Keaton did not rush the handcuffing. He did not raise his voice. He simply moved with the calm precision of someone who understood the weight of his actions. And that made the moment even more impactful. Whitford's hands were secured behind his back first. The metallic click cut through the quiet highway air like a small detonation. Brenner swallowed hard, allowing the same chilling restraints to close around his wrists. The recording bystanders fell silent. Everyone understood that this was not a normal occurrence. Police officers being handcuffed by their own chief. That was a definitive indicator that something profoundly serious had just transpired. Keaton stepped back, scrutinizing the two officers as if he were seeing them clearly for the first time. Internal Affairs will question you separately, he stated, his voice steady. But let me make one thing unequivocally clear. What you have done today represents the kind of misconduct that erodes public trust. Whitford's jaw trembled. Sir, we did not intend... Keaton cut him off with a single penetrating look. Intent does not erase impact. Marcus stood near the SUV, arms crossed, not in defiance but with a quiet steadfastness, like someone who had finally felt solid ground beneath his feet after hours of precariously balancing on edge. Keaton turned toward Marcus. Deputy Rivers, you will need to provide a complete statement once Internal Affairs arrives. I want every detail documented, every word they uttered, every action they took, every warning they disregarded. I will be thorough, Marcus replied. You always are, Keaton acknowledged. A second patrol car arrived, followed shortly by a third. The Internal Affairs van rolled up moments later. 2 investigators stepped out, clipboards in hand, their body cameras already activated. Their presence introduced a different kind of silence, the kind officers experience when accountability becomes an inescapable reality. Investigator Laura Collins, sharp-eyed and direct, approached first. What do we have? Keaton gestured toward the SUV. An illegal stop, illegal detainment, and an illegal search. Deputy Rivers identified himself early in the encounter, but they ignored him. The entire incident is captured on multiple cameras. Collins nodded once and then turned to Marcus. Deputy, are you prepared to walk us through your side of events? Marcus gave a short nod. Yes, ma'am. She motioned for him to step aside with her. The second investigator, Michael Grant, approached the 2 handcuffed officers. Officers, he stated coldly, we will require your statements separately. And to be perfectly clear, providing false information about any detail will only exacerbate your situation. Whitford closed his eyes. Brenner stared at the ground as if it might swallow him whole. Grant remained impassive. Which one of you initiated the stop? Whitford lifted his head slightly. I did. And your reason? Whitford hesitated. That hesitation was sufficient. We, believed the driver did not match the vehicle. So you profiled him, Grant stated. His tone remained unchanged. He did not need to raise his voice. That alone is a violation of department policy. What happened next? We asked him to step out. Grant tilted his head. Asked? Whitford's voice dropped. Ordered. And did he resist? No. Grant nodded slowly. Yet you escalated and searched the vehicle without consent. Whitford's voice faded to a whisper. Yes. On the other side of the scene, Collins concluded her conversation with Marcus. Her expression hardened, and she marched directly toward Keaton. Chief, we are initiating a formal misconduct investigation. Based on the details provided by Deputy Rivers and the footage from his body camera, we are proposing an immediate suspension for both officers while their actions are thoroughly investigated. Keaton registered no surprise, indicating this outcome was anticipated. Collins proceeded, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. This is not a minor incident. It constitutes a violation of civil rights, with a sheriff's deputy being subjected to racial profiling and unlawful detainment. If this information becomes public, the repercussions will be immense. However, Keaton let out a sigh. It is already public knowledge, he stated, his gaze drifting towards the approximately 12 civilians who were still capturing the events on their devices. Whitford finally interjected. Sir, please, we apologize. We were unaware. Marcus stepped forward, making his presence known for the first time since his wrists were cuffed. You did not need to know my identity to treat me with dignity, he said in a low tone. Your commitment to professionalism should stem from your oath of office, not the insignia on your uniform. Whitford's mouth formed an open, then closed, gesture. There was an utter lack of anything he could possibly say, not a single utterance that wouldn't sound hollow and insincere. Collins then addressed Marcus directly. Deputy Rivers, Internal Affairs strongly advises you to lodge a formal civil complaint. You are entirely within your rights to do so. Marcus gave a single, decisive nod. I shall. Brenner visibly recoiled. That one brief statement impacted him more profoundly than the restraints he had placed on Marcus. As the Internal Affairs investigators escorted Whitford and Brenner toward the transport vehicle, a spectator in the crowd called out, They truly apprehended the wrong individual today. Another voice added, This is precisely why people lack confidence in law enforcement. Caton turned his attention to the onlookers. Everyone, kindly step back. Internal Affairs has assumed control of the scene. Marcus observed the officers being escorted into the Internal Affairs van, the very same vehicle used for officers suspected of wrongdoing. The scene was profoundly unsettling. He had witnessed countless individuals accused of crimes being placed into those vans. Seeing sworn officers entering it was a starkly different experience, necessary, undoubtedly, but distinctly unsettling. Before the doors could be fully closed, Brenner looked up, his eyes meeting Marcus's gaze for the first time without any trace of animosity. "I offer my sincerest apologies," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Do you truly mean that?" Marcus responded with a slow nod. This was not an act of forgiveness, nor a gesture of forgetting, but simply an acknowledgement. "I implore you to strive for better," Marcus conveyed. "If you continue in this profession, endeavor to improve your conduct." The doors of the van sealed shut with a definitive, heavy thud. Caton rejoined Marcus, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You navigated this situation with a level of composure that surpasses what most officers could manage. I am exceedingly proud of you." "I was merely performing my duty," Marcus replied. "You accomplished far more than that," Caton countered. "You prevented this incident from escalating into a far more serious matter." As the patrol cars departed and normal traffic flow resumed, Marcus returned to his own SUV, settling into the driver's seat. The interior felt familiar once more. It no longer resembled a crime scene or a conflict zone, but rather his professional environment, his area of responsibility, his personal domain. He firmly grasped the steering wheel with both hands, took a deep, fortifying breath, and finally, at long last, rejoined the flow of traffic. Because even after a day like this, the demands of the job never cease. The commitment symbolized by the badge does not falter, and neither does his own dedication. If you believe this incident was mishandled entirely, please share your perspectives, and be sure to follow along to see what unfolds next.